Hello dear students, I'm glad that today we are going to read the chapter The Judgement Seat of Vikramaditya, which is written by Sister Nivedita. As you can see here, the Judgement Seat of Vikramaditya, it has been very famous. Reason behind this? Okay, reason ਇਹ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਵਿਕਰਮਾਦਿੱਤਿਆ ਇੱਕ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹਾ ਰਾਜਾ ਹੋਇਆ, ਇੱਕ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹਾ ਬਾਦਸ਼ਾਹ ਹੋਇਆ ਜਿਹਨੇ ਕਿ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਜਸਟ ਦਾ ਸਾਥ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ, ਸੱਚ ਦਾ ਸਾਥ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ। ਉਹਨੇ ਕਦੇ ਵੀ ਇਨਜਸਟਿਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ। ਦੈਟਸ ਵਾਈ ਹੀ ਵਾਜ਼ ਫੇਮਸ ਐਂਡ ਹਿਜ਼ ਜਜਮੈਂਟ ਸੀਟ। ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਜਜਮੈਂਟ ਸੀਟ ਕੀ ਹੈ? ਉਹ ਜਜਮੈਂਟ ਸੀਟ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਬੈਠ ਕੇ ਉਹ ਜਜਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਿਆ ਕਰਦਾ ਸੀ। ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਸਾਨੂੰ। For many centuries in Indian history, there was no city so famous as the city of Ujjain. ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਉਜੈਨ ਮੱਧ ਪ੍ਰਦੇਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਉੱਥੇ ਟੈਂਪਲ ਹੈ ਮਾਨਾਕਾਲੇਸ਼ਵਰ, ਜਿਸ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਪੁਰਾਣੀ ਉਜੈਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਤੇ ਉਜੈਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਕਿਉਂ ਜਾਣੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਸੀ? It was always renowned as a seat of learning. Here lived at one time the poet Kalidas, one of the supreme poets of the world, fit to be named with Homer, Dante and Shakespeare. And here worked and visited only 150 years ago an Indian king who was also a great and learned astronomer, the greatest of his day, Raja Jai Singh of Jaipur. So one can see what a great love all who care for India must feel for the ancient city of Ujjain. Ujjain ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਹੋ ਗਈਆਂ? ਪਹਿਲੀ ਗੱਲ ਰਾਜਾ ਵਿਕਰਮਾਦਿੱਤਿਆ ਦੀ ਐਸੋਸੀਏਸ਼ਨ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਦੂਸਰਾ ਪੋਇਟ ਕਾਲੀਦਾਸ ਐਂਡ ਤੀਸਰਾ ਰਾਜਾ ਜੈ ਸਿੰਘ। So these main points are there in the first paragraph. ਹੁਣ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਚੈਪਟਰ ਦੀ, I am not going to read the entire chapter. ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਾਜਾ ਵਿਕਰਮਾਦਿੱਤਿਆ ਨੂੰ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਦਿੱਗਜ ਰਾਜੇ ਹੋਏ ਆ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਪੀਪਲ ਦਾ ਦਿਲ ਜਿੱਤਿਆ। ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਹੀ। ਹੁਣ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਸ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ when we move further, the king Raja Vikramaditya, he had never deceived anyone. Never did he punish the wrong man. The guilty trembled when they came before him, for they knew that his eyes would look straight into their guilt. And those who had difficult questions to ask and wanted to know the truth were thankful to be allowed to come, for they knew that their king would never rest till he understood the matter, and that then he could give an answer that would convince all. So this kind of king was Raja Vikramaditya. He must have sat in the judgment seat of Vikramaditya. It's a well-known phrase. People had started using it long back when Vikramaditya had left. I mean, when he was not there on this earth. Oh, whenever they used to hear a kind of announcement, a kind of punishment which is pronounced by a judge or a jury bench, they used to state this phrase, and this was the habit of speech of the whole country. Yet in Ujjain itself, the poor people forgot that the heaped up ruins of a few miles away had been his palace, and only the rich and learned and wise men who lived in the king's courts remembered. So the people, the very people of Ujjain, they themselves have forgotten who had lived there. the remains of his palace, even the judgment seat they had forgotten. You'll get to know in the next on the next page. So the story goes in the way that there was a shepherd boy. He with his herdsmen, they used to go for a walk, and particularly they used to take their cows along so that they may have good green grass just to graze. Now, when they went there, the cow herd used to stand there, they used to play there because they were too young. So they used to play there so that they may spend their time in a cheerful manner. One cow herd stands and calls at the edge of the pasture, and another goes around behind the cattle to drive them towards him, and so they come quietly forward from here and there, sometimes breaking down the brushwood in their path. So this is what they used to do. Now what happens one day? There was a boy, a shepherd. What does he do? He found a kind of stone, and he sat there. When he sat on that stone and while playing a game, they had a kind of mock court and they started a trial. When the trial started, a few boys came to him a boy who was sitting on the stone, completely unaware of the fact that it is the same stone which belongs to Raja Vikramaditya. So, what does he do? The judgment he pronounces was very serious, it was grave and a wise one. Everybody was shocked at his decision, at his pronouncement. Now what happens? But now a strange thing made itself felt. When the judge had sat down on the mound, he was just a common boy. But when he had heard the question, even to the eyes of the frolicsome lads, he seemed quite different. He was now full of gravity, and instead of answering in fun, he took the case seriously and gave an answer which in that particular case was perhaps the wisest that man had ever heard. These kind of incidents are never stayed aside. They can never be forgotten by the people. Nobody can hide these kind of incidents from anyone. Gradually, the news of this spread through the countryside, and grown-up men and women from all the villages about that part would bring their lawsuits to be decided in the court of the herd boys on the grass under the green trees. And always they received a judgment that both sides understood and went away satisfied. So all the disputes in that neighborhood were settled. Now what will happen? As we all know that there are people who will definitely be after that particular mound. Same thing happens in the story as well, that a person who is aware of the fact that it is this mound belongs to Vikramaditya, and the place where these boys play and pronounce the judgments, that place belongs to the ruins of Vikramaditya's palace. Now this king, the new one, he orders his men to bring that mound to his village so that he can be seated and he should pronounce the judgment as that boy is doing. And this way he will be very famous and he will definitely be able to solve the issues. So men with spades and tools came to disturb the ancient peace of the pastures, and the grassy knoll where the boys had played was overturned. All about the spot were now heaps of earth and broken wood and upturned sod, and the cows had to be driven further afield. But the heart of the boy who had been judged was sorrowful, as if the very home of his soul were being taken away from him. So finally that mound was taken there, and the entire city, they were very happy. People were happy because the judgment seat was there with them. So there was a huge festival. Everybody was playing around, enjoying this festival, and it went for 3 long days of prayers and fasting. Now the day came when the king was about to sit on the mound. When he had done this, however, and was just about to sit down, one of the 25 stone angels began to speak. "Stop! Thinkest thou that thou art worthy to sit on the judgment seat of Vikramaditya?" It asks, "Do you think that you are worthy to sit on the judgment seat of Vikramaditya? Have you never desired to bear rule over kingdoms that were not your own?" And the countenance of the stone angel was full of sorrow. At these words, the king felt as if a light had blazed up within him and shown him a long array of tyrannical wishes. He knew that his own life was unjust. After a long pause, he spoke, "No, I'm not worthy." And immediately he left that place. Now, what happens next? At last 4 times, 24 days had gone, and still 3 more days of fasting, and it was now the 100th day. Only one angel was left supporting the marble slab, and the king drew near with great confidence, for today he felt sure of being allowed to take his place. Now, whenever he tried to sit there, every time he was shunted out, he was kicked away. Reason being he was not just, he was not the right person to be placed on the mound used by Vikramaditya. So, as he drew near and prostrated himself, the last angel spoke, "Art thou then perfectly pure in heart, O king? Is thy will like unto that of a little child? If so, thou art indeed worthy to sit on this seat." Now, these words are in this form because these words are from ancient English. Let's read it in modern English. "Are you then perfectly pure in heart, O king?" Now again, the last angel was left with the one slab, because rest of the angels, when did not get satisfactory answer, they had left. So the last angel is left behind, and he had asked the king, "Are you then perfectly pure in heart? Are you is thy will like unto that of a little child? Is your wish like that of a child? If so, you are indeed worthy to sit on this seat." Means if a person is pure at heart and soul, is just and pure, honest, loyal, only and only then the person can be seated on that particular mound. "No," said the king, speaking very slowly, and once more searching his own conscience as the judge examines the prisoner at the bar. but with great sadness, "No, I'm not worthy." And at these words, the angel flew up into the air, bearing the slab upon his head, so that never since that day has it been since upon the earth. But when the king came to himself and was alone, pondering over the matter, he saw that the last angel had explained the mystery. Only he who was pure in heart, like a little child, could be perfectly just. That was why the shepherd boy in the forest could sit where no king in the world might come on the judgment seat of Vikramaditya. That's it. So the main reason behind that shepherd boy to be seated on that particular mount was that that little child was perfectly just. He was pure at heart and soul. And that's why he was allowed by the angels to be seated on that particular seat. So that's it. I hope you have liked the story. Kindly note down the difficult words and write each and every word in your notebook and find out the meanings so that you enhance your vocabulary along with the reading and the listening skills. Thank you very much. Stay blessed.